Good morning, everybody, and welcome to STEM Inspiration Week, Day 2, Technological Tuesday. And today I'd like to introduce you to the fantastic Jane Power from BT, who's going to be talking about arts and literature to network engineer. So how the fact that that there is a creative nature in all STEM subjects, I think is going to be really fantastic. I just want to let you know that please keep your cameras and your microphones off just to minimize distraction and external noise. This session will be recorded and will be available for viewing afterwards. We will be using the chat to ask questions, so please, if you've got any questions, I'm sure that Jane would like you to ask lots of questions, just use the chat function and it will be moderated. So I'm going to hand over to Jane now. Thank you very much, Jane.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jane. I'm a network engineer from BT, and my talk today is on how arts and literature can lead into an engineering career and the fundamental principles that link the two areas that are usually considered total opposites. So before I introduce myself properly, I've got a few questions to wake you up this morning. And if you just put your answers in the chat, I'm curious to see what you think. So the first one is, what words do you think of when you hear arts and literature? So I might have to ask Mark to tell me what's in the chat because I can't actually see it.
Nothing at the moment, Jane.
Nope.
Just waiting for them to get warmed up.
Yep, it is early in the morning.
We've got one's come in, said artist.
Artist, it's a good one.
Paintings.
Paintings, yep.
Design.
Design's one I'm going to come back to. That's definitely one.
Life. Architecture.
Another very good one that he's going to link back in later.
Sculpting.
Yep.
Creative writing.
Yes, creativity is a big one. Okay, so we've got a few there. So now I'm going to ask the same question. Oh, no. Yep. What words do you think of when you think of network or engineering? This one might be a bit trickier.
Internet.
Mm-hmm.
Electricity.
Oh, yep.
Complexity.
See, that is an interesting one we're going to come back to again.
Virgin Media.
Solid answer. Okay, so lots and lots of people struggle to define these two specifically as they're really broad. So I'm going to try and simplify it down to the bare basics of what network and engineering means. So what's a network? It's an interconnection of what we call nodes, which is essentially a standing word that we use to mean a thing, whether that's a person or a device or whatever. So the network is how they link together. So you may have heard the term networking, as in career networking, which is just each of these dots would represent a person and its relationships between those people. Network, in our case, could be how your phone links to your Wi-Fi, links to your TV, and so on and so forth. So it's very simple. That's all a network is. So then what's an engineer? It's someone who solves problems through making stuff. You can make that definition way more complicated, and you probably will see more complicated definitions. But at the purest form, this is what it is. It's someone who solves problems through making stuff, whether that be physically building stuff, writing code, designing solutions, whatever it is. So we pull those two terms together, and here's a broad definition of what a network engineer is. It's someone who makes stuff to solve problems in connected devices. So now you know what I mean when I talk about network engineer or network engineering. So I want you to picture in your mind a network engineer. What do they look like? What do they do? What skills do they have? So do they look like this? Is it someone on a laptop surrounded by cabling? Or this, pretty similar, looking at the detail of a cabling, checking it's correct, very technical. Or even like this, drawing out and designing a network. Does that match to what you're thinking of? These images were all literally at the top of a Google search for network engineering. So you have your engineer in your head. How did they get to their position? What skills do they have? What qualifications do they have? If you put some guesses in the chat, I've got some ideas to give you a start. So do they have science GCSEs and A-levels? Are they really good at maths? Did they study engineering? Do they have a degree? If there's anything else in the chat of your ideas, if I can get either Helen or Mark to shout them out.
Just give them a couple of secs.
Yep.
A background in computer science.
Okay. Good answer.
Intelligent.
Okay, another good answer.
Math skills.
Math skills, that's the big one people think. Yep.
Problem solving.
Problem solving, perfect.
Eye for detail.
Yes, that's another big one. Okay, so if you keep those coming in throughout and what you think a network engineer is, and I want you to keep this idea of who a network engineer is in your mind for the rest of this presentation and see if your mind gets changed a bit by the end. So I want to touch back on this image. So you're probably asking at this point, what the heck does this have anything to do with arts and literature? Well, out of the 3 images I showed, this is the only one that has any semblance of anything to do with art, and that's literally that he's drawing something. And from the surface, it doesn't look creative, but it's where we can get our first connection, which is that networks have a design. Someone has creatively designed this network. So I don't think this is too controversial definition. Arts and literature provide ways to explain the world around us. We can show how we're feeling, evoke emotions by pulling on the right strings, communicating ideas and thoughts. And there's tricks in arts and literature. There's little rules that change the effect. So short, sharp sentences give an impact. The color yellow denotes creativity. Metaphors communicate complicated ideas quickly, and so on and so on. Let me just move so I can see. And this is the dirty little secret of technology. It's exactly the same. The same creativity that makes you choose the design of your painting, why you've painted that color there, why you've used that technique, is the same creativity that network engineers use to decide their designs. And I realize this is a large abstract idea. So I want to break it down a bit more by explaining how I ended up working at BT in network engineering, because it's quite a good example of how arts and literature can link to network engineering. So my schooling up here, completely regular. I've got the standard GCSEs, you know, maths, English, science, and then I put a gap because I chose these options. And I want to stress that my ICT GCSE isn't the same as the current computer science GCSE. It was essentially how to use Microsoft Office, and that was pretty much it. I've barely used it other than for making PowerPoints and Excels and things. And then at A-level, I wanted to keep my options open. I still had no idea what I wanted to do. So I did 2 sciences, but I loved photography and English. So I ended up actually doing 4 A-levels. And critical thinking on there is kind of similar to English literature. And I actually did pretty badly in chemistry, which is not an encouragement to do badly, I stress. So English was really my thing. And I had pretty good grades in the other 3 subjects and was expected to go to uni, so I did. I went to UEA in Norwich and I got a degree in film and English studies because I enjoyed the subject and I still had no idea what I wanted to do for a career. So when I graduated, I was looking at marketing. I did an internship in marketing while I was still at uni, and that was okay. I enjoyed it. I ended up getting a job proofreading at a law firm because it's English related, and it was a very, very good firm that had a lot of prospects. But through that job, I learned what I liked and what I didn't. So this is my brief list of likes and dislikes. I discovered I liked working in detail. I liked spotting mistakes and having responsibility. I liked the pay. I'm going to be absolutely honest about that. It was the first time I really had a substantial income coming in. I was working 3 jobs while I was at university, and now I could work 1 job and get more money than those 3 combined. That was like a dream. And I really liked explaining complex things and people suddenly understanding them. I also learned I hated commuting to work, and I hated the hustle and bustle of a big city. It was one of those things that people were always like, well, if you want a good job, then that's the way things are. And I really struggled to accept that. I hated shift work. I actually worked nights at this job, and I found I really didn't like that. I didn't like working on my own, and I didn't like that I would proofread something and then it was done and I'd move on to the next thing and never know any outcomes. I always wanted to know why, what happens to this next. And this list of likes and dislikes aren't academic things, and they're not things I knew before I tried them out. But at this point, I was still all about media and art and getting really despondent because it was just wasn't looking like that was a realistic goal for me with these likes and dislikes. So I started looking at big employers near my hometown because one of my likes was literally that I didn't want to move. I wanted to be near my family, and my time at UEA decided that for me because I was lonely there and came back home a lot anyway. So I literally got lucky that BT had its R&D centre near my hometown. And I was also looking at medical illustration jobs at the hospital, and I was looking at marketing agencies in town. But then I remembered that BT TV existed, and so there was a media link there. And I found the apprenticeship scheme. Okay, I'd have to do another degree, but it would be included as part of the apprenticeship rather than cost extra, and it was a foundation degree rather than a full one. It would be a completely retraining for a new career, so kind of starting again, which was scary. And it was less money than I was on currently initially. So I would have to wait 3-4 years before I went back to the same money I was already on. And it was a science degree, which terrified me because, as you'll recall, no maths A level over here, which is usually a must for that sort of thing. So when I looked at a scheme, there are a few options that came up for me to apply to. There was a TV production one, a networking one, and a software one. So I immediately discounted the software one. I've never coded in my life. I have now, but then I hadn't. The TV production one only had 3 spots opened, but it aligned with my film degree and interest in arts, so I applied for it. And then I got a call back to interview for the networking apprenticeship, which I hadn't actually realized I'd applied for. I'd got a bit confused on the form, but I decided, yeah, I can always move to BT TV later. Once I'm in there, I might as well go to the interview. So I went and I got the job. And I was really encouraged by the job offer because it was in a department that at the time was called Voice and Multimedia. And I was like, oh, media, that's still relevant. I'm not here to sell apprenticeships, by the way. It just worked out for me. So it's just a good example. So I got the job and suddenly I was working in tech. Yay! That was never my intention. How did that happen? And how was I suddenly good at it? So the first thing I learned was that technology can be taught. It can be taught to anyone if it's explained well enough. And remember back earlier in the presentation when I said arts and literature provide ways to explain the world around us. I suddenly realized that studying arts and literature and analyzing poems and writing essays about the Great Gatsby or whatever has given me skills to explain these complicated technologies to people. Because really, the technology is no more complicated than Ulysses or Chaucer or Homer or various literature. And I also figured out through my first degree that I'd learned how I learn, what I need to teach myself things, what I need to understand things. So while the subject of the degree, the science degree, was hard, it was easy for me to break things down and figure out the important bits that I needed. I actually ended up topping that foundation degree up to a BSc and currently looking into starting a PhD, which is something I never thought I'd say. The other massive thing I learned is that what they call soft skills, you might have heard that term, listening, presenting, group discussions, communications, all that stuff. In the technology industry, if you're good at those, you've got a huge advantage. Technical people get very bogged down in detail, which is great because that's how problems get solved. And I love detail myself. But technology companies are also businesses, and there's senior managers and stakeholders and all these people you have to explain this stuff to who don't care about the detail, they just care about the result. So if you can present something in a way that they understand it, but you can also understand it at a detailed engineering level, you're golden. So all the years I spent studying arts and literature and film weren't a waste. I use those skills every day. Just yesterday, I had to put together a presentation for the evolution plan of one of our networks that senior managers could understand, but engineers also would have enough information from for them to buy into it. When I got the job, I didn't have a degree in a tech-related field. I didn't have a maths A level, but I did have something just as valuable, which is the skills I got from studying art, which you never would have thought would be useful. Sorry, just checking my time there. So I'll say end, but it's a bit of a long end with one more story. So a couple of years ago, I got the chance to be an extra in a massive Disney movie that was shooting in London. It wasn't through BT, it was totally outside. So I booked annual leave and went and did it because why wouldn't I do that? I was on a big film set and shooting on probably one of the biggest films of that year. And I learned so much about film productions and making films and so on. And if you'd asked me 6 years ago when I was leaving high school, then that was exactly where I wanted to be. That was my dream role. But while I was shooting, I found I didn't like it. The amount of money and time going into something like that, compared with my day job, where I'd worked on emergency 999 call centers and automated emergency calls for car crashes, where I really felt like I was making a difference to people's lives. And I didn't feel like this on that set. So I realized that was another thing that was super, super important to me in my career, is I want to help people. So I haven't moved to BTTV. I've stayed in voice where I can see the effect that my work has. And COVID was a super good example. We put extra capacity into the network as everyone started working from home and Zoom calls became the new normal. And we helped set up the Nightingale hospitals. And I feel really, really proud of what we did. So there's two main things to take away. The first is it's okay to change your mind. I had no set plan. By choosing certain subjects to study, you're not locking yourself into anything, even though it really feels like you are. If you start a career path and find you don't like it, that's okay too. You can retrain. At my apprenticeship, it wasn't all school leavers. The ages range between 18 and 35. So never feel like you're stuck. And then the other takeaway is that when you experience something or study something or have a job or whatever, work out what it is about that you like and what you don't like. What's important to you? Not academically, but just personally. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and I fell into my career, but it's working out pretty well because I enjoy what I do. Sure, you might have to compromise and take jobs to figure out what you like, but try stuff out. You might find something perfect for you. So the connection basically between arts and literature and network engineering is it's the same fundamental skills. Like I said earlier, the technology can be taught. It's the basic skills of analysis and connecting to the world around you and working out your place in the world and how you can communicate that. It's relevant in both. It's probably relevant in everything. So don't discount science careers because of a lot of those words that came up at the beginning when you think of network and engineering. The words like intelligence comes in lots of different forms. You can be intelligent without having high academic process. You can still be incredibly good engineer. Maths, I'm still terrified of maths. I'm dyslexic, I'm not good at maths, but I've made it work for me. There are ways around it, that's not an absolute. And this is, I think I've spoken a bit quickly, this talk's gone kind of quickly, but that's pretty much the end of my talk. So we can open for questions if that's okay with Mark and Helen. We can put anything in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Has anyone got any questions for Jane? I mean, it's a great, inspiring talk.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And I've got a little confession, Jane.
Yep.
I used to be a network engineer.
Hey, do you agree with me?
Yeah. Many moons ago, I used to be a network engineer. So I worked for Reuters Thompson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Would you agree that the skills are fundamental skills rather than the technology skills?
Yeah, so I left them pretty much for the same reasons you dislike working like shift work and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And and I went on did my PhD. So it's and now you are as well. And actually, I found a lot of the skills I got with as a network engineer were used in my PhD. So I did a lot of graph theory in my PhD, which is really important for designing networks. So yeah, it's funny how things come around, isn't it? Is there enough money in it? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes. Any sort of technology field tends to pay pretty well. Yeah. Someone on there said we would like to know what film you're in. I was an extra in I'm not allowed to say exactly what film, but it was a Star Wars film. I'm not allowed to say exactly which one.
Wow.
Out the front door.
Any more questions out there? I'm sure you've got some more questions for Jane. I'll ask one, Jane. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Oh, I hate that question.
I know, everyone does.
So I never know the answer to this, because if I look back 5 years, I would not think I am where I am now. But generally, I'd like to go more into either the design side or the innovation side of the technology, and get closer to basically the beginning stages of how the technology is developed.
Wow, yes, fantastic. That would be a great move.
While we're still waiting for some more questions to come in, I have one. Do you know what the subject of your PhD is going to be?
I'm looking at, let me get this right, it was wireless media and optical something analysis. It was basically looking at human-machine interactions.
Oh, cool.
One of the classes have had to leave because of the timetable constraints. So we'll just see if we've got any more questions. And
yeah, please do ask questions. Don't be afraid. I'm sure Jane is more than keen to answer your questions.
Yes, and I won't be offended by anything.
Your presentation was so inspiring. You've probably covered most of the questions that there are to ask.
I tried to put in all the stuff I wish people had told me, because a
Really
lot of it
good
for me
point.
is figuring out, and there was never really anyone who said to me, oh, this technology could be a viable career for you. That was never, it was always go into English.
There's a really good one. Were there any hurdles you nearly didn't get over?
Yes, but most of them were hurdles within myself. So there was the whole completely changing career direction. And the fact I kept telling myself, oh, BTTV's there, I can always change back, helped. But that was terrifying. But at the time, I'd finished university, I'd been working at this law firm, I'd moved back in with my parents, I needed a stable job. So that kind of pushed me into it, which was really helpful. The other one was when I first started the degree and there was a maths module on the degree. That scared me so much because no maths A level. But I just put a lot of work in and worked out. I basically rediscovered maths, which sounds stupid, but I had never got the basics of it, because it had always been explained to me of, oh, there's this equation and that equation, not this is how they fit together, this is how things work. So it just got explained to me in a different way, and suddenly I could do it.
That does make a hell of a lot of sense. And experience as well through life and jobs make that happen as well, don't they?
Yeah.
I think you also make a very good point. Well, actually, two good points. The first is most people do not do for a living what they did in their career, in their degree. Most people do something different. And the other point you make is your life choices don't necessarily fix you on a pathway. And most people will change their careers nowadays, sometimes during their life. I mean, I think I'm on number 3. So, you know, just because if you hate your job and you hate your career, you can change, and the opportunities are there to change. So just because you've decided to do, you know, medicine, for example, and you suddenly realise after nearly finishing your medical degree you really, really hate it, doesn't mean you can't change. What kept you going? That's a good question.
Well, personally, I was just in a much better position living at home than I was when I was living away. The people, I was on a group of apprenticeship people, so we were all together. So we sort of leant on each other, even though there were massive age gaps. Like I say, it was between age 18, school leavers, and 35 career changes. And just generally, I knew I had certain goals in mind. Like I knew I wanted to save up some money for a mortgage, and I knew I wanted to work in a job for more than 3 years, which I'd never done. So that sort of thing kept me going, just goals, basically. And I can see on there how long have I been in my current job. I've been in my current job for 5 years now.
Anything else?
I think that might be all the questions. So
I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you very much, Jane. If you can just stay on the call,
Yep.
And hopefully for the rest of the schools on the call, we'll see you in other sessions on STEM Inspiration Week. There's a lot more to go, and I hope you took a lot away from that. I certainly did. Thank you very much.
just to let everybody know, I've just sent the Google form link. If you can just give us your feedback, that would be fantastic. Just a few questions on there to help us with planning more inspirational weeks for students in the years ahead. So thank you very much again for attending.